How's it going? I am very excited because today we are kicking off the first video in a series all about uploading files to the web. In this video, we're going to start with the basics of getting started with HTML. So first and foremost, looking over at my screen, we can see that I have a simple page that's asking me to upload a file. So let's get started with the code. Now this project does live within a Nuxt.js application, but that is not going to be relevant today because we are just going to be looking at the HTML. So the very first problem we're going to run into is accessing a file that we actually want to upload. Unfortunately, or rather fortunately, the browser doesn't have access to the user's file system. It's kind of a safe, secure sandbox environment. So in order to get a file, we have to provide a way for users to interact and choose a file for us to use. We can do that with an input element. If we look at the page now, we can see that we have just a plain text input, but we actually want to be able to use files. So we can change this to a type of file. Now I can choose a file from my file system, but I have nothing to do next. In order to be able to send the file, we actually need a form element. And I can put the file, put the file in there. And then to submit the form, I of course will need a submit button. I'm just going to add a little bit of space between the input and the button, and we can see it's looking pretty good. Now a couple little touches just to make sure that this file is in good shape. We want to have a label for every file. We'll just call this one file. And to associate those two, this input needs an ID that matches the for attribute on the label. And we also need to give it a name so that when we send the data, the value of this input is associated with this name field. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now let's see what happens when I actually submit this request. If we look at the network tab, we can see that we have sent a GET request and we've sent the payload as a query string parameter where we have the name of the input and the value of just a string of the file name. So the first problem here is that we can't actually send a file using a GET request because you can't really put a file in the query string parameters. What we want is to be able to put the file in the body of the request. So this is going to be problem number 2 that we solve. And we do that by changing the forms method to a post request. So now if we explore that request, we can see that we are making a post request and we have a payload here that's sending form data, but we're still saying that input name of file, and we're still sending the payload as just a string of file.txt. So unfortunately, we're still not actually sending the file, and the reason has to do with the request content type. By default, the form, when you submit it, is going to send a content type of application xwww form URL encoded data. And unfortunately, we can't send the binary file information as URL encoded data. In order to send the file contents as binary data to be uploaded somewhere, we have to change the content type for the request to multipart form data. And in order to do that, we can modify the form's enc type attribute. So going back to our code, I can change the enc type to multipart form data and see how that changes the request. So now if we upload the file, we can see that we're sending that post request. We have the content type set to multipart form data, and we see this little boundary, which is the identifier for the multipart form data. We'll get into that in a different video. We'll also notice that we can no longer inspect the request payload. And that's actually okay. You're just going to have to take my word for it that it's working. In the next video, we'll look at using JavaScript to make the same request, and we'll be able to see the binary data in the payload. But for now, let's just recap. In order to send files with HTML, we need to do 3 things. 1, we need to create an input with the type of file so that we can actually have access to the file system. 2, we need to change the forms method to a post request so that we can send the file within the contents of the request body. And C, we need to set the appropriate content type for the request, which is multipart form data. And we do that with the enc type attribute on the form element. With all that in place, we can upload files using HTML. So I hope you learned something today. And if you want to follow along for the next videos in the series, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you think. All right, I'll catch you next time.